Welcome to Conscious Quest, the LA-based podcast where we aim to stay conscious about everything current. Welcome back, everybody. You're here for another episode of Conscious Quest, the podcast where we keep you conscious about everything current. I'm one of your hosts, Sarah Parlow.
And I'm Rishi
Today, we have a topic that Rishi picked, and I'll let you start off with that, Rishi.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to just begin. I have still getting over a cold, so it sounds like I have a frog in my throat, and so forgive me for that. But today's topic is something that it's a close one for me for most of my life. It's meditation. Meditation. You've heard about it. Someone's talked about it, and we're here to tell you that it's real, and there's tons of benefits, not just for calmness, and it's not some sort of kumbaya thing that people from Tibet do or something like that. It's people every day in LA, in California, in the United States, around the world can benefit from almost immediately.
Yeah, and it's been around for a long time, hasn't it, Rishi? Like thousands of years.
Thousands of years. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, and all the information that I have, it's not coming from me. It's coming from ancient texts and much wiser people than me.
I love that you brought that up, because that was one of the points I wanted to mention, is that meditation is mentioned in things as far back as the Bhagavad Gita, which, for those of you who do not know, it's the sacred book of India, and it is much older than the Bible. And meditation mentions that it is a pathway to purify the mind and to attain self-realization. And for all of you Christians out there, there's even some references to it in the Bible. Specifically, I'm talking about Matthew 6:22, where Jesus is talking about if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. And there's a lot of, if you look at the esoteric meaning of what that is, we have our physical eyes, which is our human senses, and then the single eye, a lot of people believe refers to the Ajna chakra, which is your colloquially called third eye, or looking up through your spiritual eye. When you are looking through your spiritual eye with spiritual vision, your whole body is full of light. So here we have it, referenced in ancient texts and still relevant today.
Very relevant. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many things that are in the Bible it's metaphorical. When I read the Bible, I think that the Bible was written as a big metaphor. It truly is. And like the kingdom of heaven, that's the talk of, of a spiritual world is what that is. The kingdom of heaven on earth. That's the language of the Bible, what they chose to represent. And there's all kinds of references. And I think that the prayer can be a meditation as well.
Yeah, let's talk about examples. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Even a worry is a silent prayer for the thing that you don't want, which I find funny.
Misdirected meditation.
That's right. People, if you want prayer, prayer it's almost like a mantra. I think there's so many parallels. I think the distinction between, Christianity and the Western world and the Eastern world, I think they overlap so much that, for instance, if you for one of the prayers or one of the types of meditation, and we can talk about this, is transcendental meditation. And part of what you do for that is you just get a mantra, and you can actually focus on the mantra. But you do that absolutely when you do the Hail Mary, you get the rosary, and you're sitting there and you're peeling through and going through your little beads. I have one too, actually. It's not a rosary, but it's something similar.
A japa.
I'm going to pull my light.
Japa beads.
Yeah, let me see these beads here. Yeah. These are actually made so you can keep track of how much you're praying and doing your mantra. So mantra meditation is the same as saying a prayer again and again, but focusing on that. And how does that work, Sarah? You do it more than I do. You have more connection to transcendental meditation.
Yeah, so actually, I studied and learned transcendental meditation during my last year when I was living in Austin. I think it was 2012 or 2013. And I was on the hamster wheel of life, doing the thing, working in anesthesia, not feeling a lot of purpose in life, not feeling really like I had direction. And I felt like a lot of my life was compartmentalized. And I saw an ad somewhere about a talk about transcendental meditation. And I went, and someone who had been practicing for a long time was there giving a talk. And she verbalized how, stressful thoughts are like knots in our nervous system. And what meditation does is it helps us to untie and loosen those knots so that we can
Mm.
live and exist and feel more free in life. And, the practice is pretty simple. What you're basically doing is you are learning a mantra, which is a short phrase that you say silently, and you focus on the mantra so that you can still and quiet the thoughts that come into your head. So when thoughts come up, you would just let them go. And the practice is 20 minutes of doing that with your eyes closed, twice a day, so morning and night. And this is an interesting practice. It's very simple. It was brought to the West by a yogi named Maharishi Mahesh, and he was prominent in the 1960s, and he definitely was in celebrity circles. He hung out with a few people you might have heard of, like the Beach Boys or these kids from Liverpool called the Beatles. The Beatles were famous for going to his ashram in Rishikesh in the late
Uh,
60s, and there was
I've been there before, just by the way. I've been to
you
Rishikesh.
have. Oh my gosh. Well, that's
Yeah.
something we can talk about too. Um, but yeah, there was some interesting things about Maharishi, but he did instill this teaching in something like 40,000 teachers who went on to teach like 5 million people transcendental meditation. And the thing about it, and this was interesting to me, Maharishi Mahesh, it's not a free process. You pay a sum of money in order to learn this practice, and it's not cheap. And the rationale he had for this is that people in the West do not value what they do not pay for. And I kind of get that in a way. Unless you've got skin in the game in anything, you're just not going to take it as seriously. And he wanted this to be taken very seriously. So, in a nutshell, I'll just sum up. I started doing meditation, quieted my mind, enabled me to make the choices I needed to in order to propel forward in my life because I was able to get quiet and stop thinking so much. And one time when I was doing it a lot, I realized like it had turned down the dial, the knob of my anxiety, my just baseline anxiety that I sometimes deal with. And I could just function more clearly, especially in stressful situations, as if I was just seeing or observing things that were happening rather than getting so emotionally tied up in them, which is a really handy thing to do when you work in anesthesia. So either way, I wanted to share that that was my personal experience with one form of meditation and how it
Mm-hmm.
benefited me. And Rishi,
So
maybe,
great. I mean, I
yeah.
think, and sometimes like when we're seeking, a lot of us, we look for things to help us grow only in times of stress. I think,
Mm-hmm.
it's those moments where either you can choose to accept the stressful environment and just accept this as your reality, or you can use it as a stepstone to reach for something greater. And we have to make that choice. And I think that meditation, helps a lot of people. I had a similar story, and I said this story dozens of times now, and I'll say it real quick. So I had a crisis point when I first moved to LA in the mid 2000s, and I was working, in downtown LA for a large law firm, and I was commuting back and forth between Santa Monica and downtown LA. Sometimes on a motorcycle, most of the time in my car. And it's so if you're not from Los Angeles, that commute from Santa Monica to downtown LA in heavy
Awful.
traffic, it's like a parking lot, and you're creeping along, and it's just horrible. It's just, well, not horrible. I won't say it like that, but it's just It's just a long time, right? So you're just a long time stuck in your car.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was just doing that daily, so anyway, so long story short, I felt something was wrong and I didn't know what. And so I went back to my meditation practice, which my dad taught me. I do this thing called Vipassana, or
Oh, I love you
mindfulness.
said that. Yes, we have to expand upon that.
Yeah, so Vipassana is a type of meditation where you just it's I didn't know what I was doing. Actually, I didn't know I was doing that type of form, but I look back and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's just basically self-awareness. There's no mantra, so I'm not focusing on a mantra to kind of get me into the zone. I'm quieting my mind using breathing techniques, focusing on the breath, getting quiet, and then focusing on consciousness. I'm focusing on the mind's eye actually here and seeing, not even seeing or expecting anything or forcing this, just being present with that. And I was doing that daily, actually. I was coming back from the office. It was already dark. It was this time of year in November, and it was getting dark and early. And I was just meditating on the floor, and then one day I just had an answer, actually. I'll never know what it is, if it was God, if it was like a spirit guide, if it was my own subconscious or something. But I was asking, like, what can I do to fix my life? And then the answer came. It came to me, and then I followed it. Actually, as soon as I heard it, actually, I almost collapsed from relaxation. I was like, oh, relief.
Wow.
And I was like, this is it. This is the way. And I laid down, and then I was sure that was the way, and it was. It changed my life. It wasn't easy, but yeah. But
So what was
that's the
the
way it
answer?
was for me.
Can we ask?
It was, yeah. It's an old one. Yeah. It was med school. Let's go to med school is what it was.
Wow.
And then one thing left another, and all of a sudden things worked out.
So you had this moment of clarity, is what you're describing, as a result of quieting
Yes.
your mind.
I've been coming more closely into believing, in other things. I've been very skeptical about spirit guides, and I hate to say this, but this is like how I am. Like, I was skeptical on spirit guides, and if anyone's heard of Abraham Hicks, she has her guides, and they speak through her. And so part of me wants to say, it's all subconscious. It's all just your subconscious, and you're bringing it up. But lately, I'm not so sure anymore. Maybe there are guides out there. Maybe there are higher beings and other levels of existence. I believe in God. Mm-hmm. So why am I limiting my idea of the spirit world to just one entity?
It's mystery of life kind of stuff.
Maybe it was a spirit guide. Maybe we have all those. But there's other types of meditations too, not just TM or transcendental meditation. There's Vipassana. There's guided meditations as well, loving kindness meditation. The stuff that's more modern, it's more about visualization type of stuff, which is a form of meditation as well. Or body scan or progressive muscular relaxation. We do that at the office often. In my little groups that I do, that's something I help people who don't really have a good grasp of meditation or consciousness. Having them focus on their body and relaxing it all the way from the top to the bottom helps them relax, and they see the benefit. And also the breathing techniques is also breath awareness meditation. There's another big technique that you can do that doesn't necessarily feel like meditation, but it is. It is a type of meditation.
And mindfulness is another example. Being aware of your thoughts. Some schools of thought might include yoga in meditation because there is a mind-body component to it. Tai Chi, which is a sort of martial arts movement meditation. Qigong, walking. You could even do walking meditation, just focusing on awareness while you're in movement. So we've just listed a whole lot of them. I think we should also, for our audience, maybe talk about what meditation is. Like, how would we define it, Rishi?
Well, that's a great question, Sarah. I think it always just depends. Like, I think for me, meditation it's about, oh, here, I'll go to my newer one. I have a better idea of what we're doing. So using more scientific terms and more recent scientific terms, first coined in the 80s, and I can't remember who the neurologist was, but there's this thing called the default mode network.
Mm-hmm.
Ever heard of that before, Sarah?
Yep, I have. Part of the brain.
Yeah,
It's like the
so
filter.
A little bit, yeah. It's the default mode network. The default mode is what our brain is doing when we're not thinking about anything. It's like what you're doing on the couch, and you're just looking at a wall, or looking into nothing. What is your brain doing at that point? And it seems that meditation, what it does, so the default mode network, again, is what your brain is doing. But the more active a default mode network it is, the more kind of inner chatter that there is as well. Someone make it akin to something called the ego. And the ego is obsessed with itself, and it has to do something, and so when the default mode network is very active, it has to do something. So it'll just make some stuff up is what happens. It has to, because it has to do something. It'll make up problems. It'll start self-examining oneself. It will be critical. It will self-talk and all these. It'll start imagining different things, because that's what the DMN does, because it needs to do something. And so, what meditation? Go ahead.
I was just going to interject that I think a big part of that in modern life is maybe thinking, the busyness and activity of always thinking or overthinking, which is essentially what meditation is probably trying to alleviate a lot of the time, is our obsession with thinking.
Yeah, well, it's this obsession with thinking. Like, people in the Western world, actually probably, I shouldn't say Western world, people in general, they make their thoughts akin to themselves. They think that by thinking, that is what makes a human being, right? And I think the most famous quote, obviously, is from Descartes. I think, therefore I am, and that's not all the way true. I think, therefore I am, but what is the I, right? Your thoughts just don't encompass yourself. You have lots of thoughts that aren't true. Just because you think it doesn't make it true.
Certainly not. Certainly not. So when we're getting into meditation, what you're saying is like we're getting into sort of a relaxed state, would you say? And maybe focusing our attention and maybe breathing and in a quiet setting, or some
all that stuff.
Yeah.
All that stuff. Yeah. I mean, like there's for me, I mean, I can only talk about my own subjective experience of what it is. And it's more about being able to have clarity and to allow my authentic self, which is another key word phrase, the authentic self. I think Carl Jung made that, to be present, and to observe. The thoughts aren't you, and your emotions aren't you, and you can observe them like clouds, or like maybe for like, I talk about this at the clinic, just in passing. I just talk about meditation and say, imagine you're driving in a car, and you're being pushed and propelled around by your car. That is you being affected, and the car represents your thought. Well, the car is obviously affecting you, but there's a difference when you're meditating. It's like you're on an overpass looking at all the cars, and you can observe the cars, but you don't have to, like, they're not pushing around. You're just seeing them, and like, oh, that's a red one. That's a big one. It's an 18-wheeler. This is a small one. I like that one. I don't like that one.
I love this metaphor.
It's especially for Los Angeles. Everyone can relate to that out here.
The 405 at 5:00.
Yeah, it's a 405. That's right. You can either be looking down from the Getty, looking at all the people, or you can be stuck in that traffic on the 405 going up the hill.
It's brutal, folks. It's very brutal.
That's right. Yeah. So that's how I look at it. It's just maybe put you in perspective of looking at your reality in a different way.
Yeah. You brought up before we started some benefits of meditation, and there's a lot of really concrete, like researched health, physical benefits to it, aren't there?
Oh, there sure are. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. This massive stuff. There was a really interesting article. It kind of got me thinking about it. It was a BBC one that was on maybe last month, and I shared it with my whole staff. And it was a woman who's perfectly normal. There's neither high nor low in life, and she's a mom, whatever. And then she wanted to just figure out and see what the benefits were of meditation for her. She wasn't going through any type of crises. She wasn't, as far as I know, no past trauma and these things. It's kind of just living life.
Yeah.
And so she had an fMRI done. And an fMRI is a functional MRI, and it's a way to get an image of your brain that's activated, right? So it's your active state and see in real time what's happening, shifts and changes and whatnot. So she had a fMRI done, and then 6 weeks later, she had an fMRI done again to see what happened. She was meditating, 20, 30 minutes a day, like normal stuff, nothing crazy.
Modest.
Tremendous changes happened for her.
So structural changes in the brain happened that were measurable.
Real changes. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So for instance, like if you meditate, there's a part of your brain called the amygdala. The amygdala, it's a necessary part. We demonize it in psychology, and it's like the root of all evil. It's not. It's just another part of your brain, but it is responsible for worry and fear, and activation of all that stuff, which you need. You need to have that to be alive on planet Earth.
Yeah.
And but what they found is that the amygdala for her reduced in size. So her anxiety actually reduced. Mm-hmm. Another big thing that they found for her was this thing called the hold on one second. I'm actually getting my notes here. I just want to make sure I have the right exact verbiage. So it's the insula actually. So her insula actually grew bigger.
Okay.
The insula part of her brain is the part of the brain that allows a person to have more of a connection to the mind and the body. So you're more sensitive to your body. So her insula grew. Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating.
And another big thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is fascinating. It literally grew. And another big part was her anterior cingulate gyrus. Okay. Right. So her anterior cingulate cortex in the gyrus. So that is actually part of the brain that is responsible for concentration. So guess what? On her fMRI, on her little brain, that was nothing going on, like nothing bad or good, what's happening to her, just living a normal life. It grew. Wow. It grew for her. So she was able to concentrate, and this is like just only after 6 weeks. There's a whole other list of stuff. For instance, like you have an increased density of your gray matter. The gray matter part of your brain versus white matter. The gray matter is the nuclei of your cells, of your neurons, but there's a thickness to that. It grew. They got bigger. The hippocampus actually grew as well. It had changes for her involving. So the hippocampus involves memory, learning, emotional regulation, the good stuff. There's also an increased neuroplasticity and also connectivity between the various. So this is also something that's very interesting as well, is that your left and right brain, your hemispheres, they do like different things. Like parts of your brain on the left side, there's your Broca's area, and there's Wernicke's area, which controls language. On the right side, there's different areas. And in between, there is a big connection point called the corpus callosum.
Okay.
And somehow, through meditation, both hemispheres, if one's doing this, one's going up, the other one's going down, well, eventually they sync up. Wow. And then now they're synced up. There's more connectivity, right? So you're synced up. Both sides of your brain are synced up. There's all kinds of, your DMN actually reduces in size as well. The default mode network, it gets more calm. Actually, there's, can I read the rest?
Yeah.
It's so, and I'll leave it. I'll give it back to you. But so other stuff I find very fascinating about these changes. There's this thing called a gamma wave activity. So gamma state is a state where you're in the flow. Easy. The flow state, you might have heard of it before.
Oh, I've been in it a few times. It's a great place to be.
Cool.
I want to live there.
Yeah. It's more like it's a higher state of consciousness. attention, learning, memory, you're on fire. Like, this is great. Well, people who meditate have been shown to actually have increased gamma waves activity because of that. And if you're interested in longevity, you want to have a long-term benefit. If you meditate regularly, they have found that the brain age of people who meditated for much of their life for a long period of time is their age of the brain looks younger than their contemporaries who haven't meditated. So just structural things, and it looks like a young brain versus an older brain.
Sounds like it's kind of like exercising a muscle, meditation, what it does for the brain. And all the good things you brought up, like better hemispheric communication, better emotional regulation, just incredible things. And that's just the brain we're talking about, but there's also global physical effects from meditation. I pulled up an article from the Mayo Clinic, and it talked about decrease in blood pressure, resting blood pressure, decrease in resting heart rate, the ability to regulate stress induced diseases better, things like asthma or depression or IBS, heart disease. It improves sleep quality, as well as lowering stress and increasing mind-body connection. So we have our local effects in the physical part of the brain, and then we have our sort of global physical effects. And, for something that is free and has no side effects like a drug would, that's a pretty good track record.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We have this, and it's been known for thousands of years. Meditation, just sit there, and just, you don't have to do anything. You just sit there and you concentrate on your consciousness or your breathing, or get a mantra that you like, or whatever, and then you can then have all these massive benefits. I think of being emotionally regulated. It's just so important. Otherwise, you can have, it's just, you can have the best life. You can have everything. You can have the best car. You can have the best house. You can have the best partner, and this or that. But if you're not happy, or if you're like up and down all the time, then what's the point? You're missing out on the enjoyment.
Yeah.
Maybe meditation can help.
Yeah, you're attaching to the circumstances, and that's an external locus of control versus holding the control within yourself. God knows we all can use that. I can use more of it. I'm a big fan of supporting meditation. And I heard this one discussion by a gentleman named Dan Harris, who is a co-anchor of Nightline, and he's done pieces for 2020 and things. And he has a podcast too, but essentially he had a nationally televised panic attack. Imagine that, going into massive anxiety on the air.
Nice. And everyone wants that.
No, nobody wants that. And so he wrote a book called 10% Happier, because he found that daily meditation really helped him to calm that sort of incessant voice in his head. And his feeling was that meditation made his life 10% happier, 10% better. And, for anything to give you a 10% boost in your quality of life, I think is a pretty good track record.
It's huge. I mean, something. I don't know how I came up with 10%, but, that's
random.
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's worth considering. And if y'all are interested, you could, research him and his book. But I thought that was kind of cool that even people who are pretty left-brained and pretty much science-minded and in the modern age, even they recognize, and you've said it yourself, Rishi, like just the value of a daily.
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, like for me, like I always try to base. I like to have science. They're supporting. These things. Like when I especially for things that you can't see, emotions. But they're there obviously. But the brain you can see.
Yeah.
You can't argue with the fact that parts of your brain have grown. That are responsible for concentration and for motor regulation. and the parts of your brain that are responsible for your anxiety and fear have shrunk. And that's a literal thing that happened. Not disputable. It's there in the evidence.
It's readily quantifiable.
And I love that.
Yeah.
Quantifiable. It is, you can reproduce it, again and again and again.
We love
so
that.
For me, is the reality of it. If you want to see the mind-body connection, that's it. It's right there.
I've heard of so many good things of Vipassana, and I'm really glad you brought that up earlier, Rishi. I have had friends who have gone through courses of it and said that they've had just incredible experiences. For those of you who are interested, there is a website. There's centers all over the world where you can go and learn this meditation practice. And I know you said you learned it from your dad. A lot of people, you can sign up for like a 10-day meditation retreat. And as far as I am aware, it's free. You just make a donation if you would like at the end. But essentially what's interesting is it's a silent retreat, which I think is really powerful. I've actually looked into these retreats. I haven't gone yet. But the idea of just shutting down all the noise, even if it's coming from you or someone else for a period of time, is so unheard of in modern life that I think it could be a really powerful vehicle. So that's something listeners can kind of check out and find out more about. And then, Rishi, we had talked a little bit beforehand about the ultimate goal of meditation. And it's this thing that a lot of spiritual adepts have referenced in the past. I've studied a little bit of Yogananda's work. If anybody is interested in reading the book Autobiography of a Yogi, he talked about approaching this state called samadhi. And I think I have had little glimpses of it here and there when I'm deep in meditation. I think it takes someone really experienced who's doing it more than, for instance, what that article said, the woman who did it for 6 weeks. Maybe someone who's been doing it for longer, or 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 years. You really can approach this sort of blissful state where you're really quieting down all of the personality. And, you talked about the ego, Rishi, and kind of getting into that state where you're not thinking as much. And it's this sort of really powerful, blissful state.
Some would call it, a merging with the super consciousness, like you're going back, to the great spirit. Some would say that it is emerging. When you're in samadhi, you're going back to the source of who you are. And that's samadhi. It is where you are who you are. Maybe your personality has dropped away, and it's your authentic self. It's the true consciousness, and that is what it's hard to define exactly, but it's where your authentic self, without the personality, without the body, and it goes and reconnects and it's plugged in directly in the source. And then that's what some would say samadhi is. And yeah, you can get there. You can get there in many different ways. Your yoga. If you do your sutras and do your meditation on a daily basis, you can have glimpses, of it. Yeah, it's interesting.
What I think is interesting about it too is it's not really something you collect or just grab. It's something that you essentially have to allow, or maybe it allows you in a way. There is a sense of surrender that comes with it. And you even referenced it's a little terrifying in that to what we perceive as ourself, our ego, it feels like death, because it is a surrender of our identity with what we think we are, who we are. So takes a brave soul.
So even that's like the thing for some things like ayahuasca and DMT. I have a buddy who I ride motorcycles with, and he's really into into, I mean, like I haven't done ayahuasca or DMT, and he was telling me about this latest experience about something else that he did, and he kept on saying it's real ego death. It's real ego death, and I'm like, huh? Do I really want to have my ego die? Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, part of the fear, your ego is the thing, is what you think that your personality is, is what you think that you are, but it's not really, right?
Yeah.
And so when you let that go, and when you let your ego go, you also let the barrier between you and others go, right? And then when you can let your ego go, then all of a sudden that the other person on the other side of your eyes is you. We're all connected, in this great super consciousness. We're all connected through a vibrational state. And that is the ego. Its only job, its only purpose in life is to be. And so when someone's trying to get rid of it, when your authentic self is trying to push that ego aside, it's going to try to fight you. It'll somehow want to stick around. That's right. Yeah. And it doesn't want to go. But you can have like those states. I mean, I find like those stories of like a perfect stranger, risks his life for a child who's drowning or somebody else. They don't know him, a complete stranger. But then they get in there and they're running into fire. They're running in the burning house. Or they're running to the ocean, or they're diving in for this, or for like an animal even. Because in that moment, whether it's conscious or not, you are, and that person or that animal were the same. So by saving that person, you're also saving yourself. And it's like those flashes that we have that. And you can see that too. Like, I'm not a parent. But I know, like I've talked to enough parents, and I'm my own parent, obviously my mother. And, I think that when they don't have that. They're the one, they're the same, child and parent. Yeah. And you can feel that.
It's so profound.
So that's the loss. So we have a loss of ego at sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really profound thing. The ego really, I think, represents a lot of our primal survival defense mechanisms in a lot of ways. So there's that sort of like lower self, and then, you're talking about the authentic self or the higher self, who we were before we took on all of that baggage, all of those beliefs and everything, peeling back the layers. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, definitely the layers. And then also too, I think that so going back to science and back to neuroscience to reconnect it, is the default mode network. Some would say that is what the ego is. Again, the default mode network is just there to give itself meaning, and it'll make up whatever BS it needs to make up, to have a purpose. It'll just make up problems. There's no problems, but it'll make it up because it can't be silent. You can see that in depressed people. Depressed people are very anxious people. Their DMN is very activated. Okay. Very activated.
And so for those patients, in addition to all the modalities that you offer at your clinic, do you also teach them meditation or encourage that?
Oh, yeah. We don't ever call it that just because we don't know what their background is. Yeah. I mean, because for some people, there's loaded words, and they'll just kind of roll their eyes like, oh, meditation, and they'll go to the automatic thing, which is, I don't know how to meditate, or I can't meditate. Maybe I think anyone can meditate. And we also teach too, like another way is to get rid of the DMN or your ego is to go into nature. You can't have an ego when you're walking around the woods. You're merging with the woods.
You're present.
You're present. That's right.
I think you brought up a really important point that I just want to tease out a little bit. You talked about how some people feel they cannot meditate. And I think that's a common barrier, is that people think they have to do it a certain way in order to do it right. And a lot of people, when they sit, especially initially, I experienced this. You're sitting trying to meditate, all the thoughts come in, and then you panic and say, I can't do this because, like you said, your default mode network is so used to being active.
Yeah.
Meditation is a process. It doesn't necessarily happen the same way all the time. It may take a period of time in order for you to get into it in the most calm state. Not every time you sit down to meditate, you're going to knock it out of the park and wake up feeling so refreshed. I shouldn't say wake up, because you're never really asleep in meditation. You're just relaxed. But I think people, especially in the West, tend to give up too early on it because they're expecting a certain experience. But every experience about it is perfect the way it is. And it's helping to undo some of your programming if you just give it the time and attention.
Yeah. What would you so Sarah, like, how would you tell someone if you had to give them a quick elevator speech? You have like 90 seconds with somebody. How do you meditate? Like, how do they meditate?
I think the easiest thing for people to do is just start out with something that's attainable, whether it's 1 minute or 2 minutes, and just increase a little every day. And the simplest thing is just to focus on your breathing. And when a thought comes in your head, let it go back to your breathing. Start with 1 minute on day 1, 2 minutes day 2, work up to 15 or 20. And I think that bargain basement, that's the easiest way to just get people used to it, is with something attainable and easy, and your breath is the easiest thing to focus on.
I agree. That's how I was, as a 13-year-old, that's how I was taught. My dad said to sit down, get comfortable, and just basically close your eyes and concentrate on the light that's right behind or in between your brows. That's what he said.
Perfect.
You can do that. You can sit there and just stare at it. What's it doing? Not really much anything. Just keep on looking at it. And that's how I learned how to meditate. That's pretty easy. You don't have to get into this an extreme lotus, posture with a bound lotus, feet up, and hands perfectly like coiffed into like this little thing. All that's gonna just get into like a chair, get your feet on the ground. Get to a place where you're not going to fall over left or right. And then and just start concentrating, like what you said, Sarah. I would say just close your eyes, set your timer for like a period of time, like 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it might be, and then close your eyes and then take a deep breath in and then hold it at the top and then breathe out slowly. And then you'll feel yourself sink a little bit, and then take another deep breath in and hold it at the top and then breathe out slowly. Let yourself sink deeper into the chair and take another deep breath in, hold it, and then breathe out slowly. You can already feel yourself kind of going into this state of a more calm state. And if you can do that for a couple minutes a day, don't worry about mantras or fancy words like Vipassana or transcendental or all these things. It's just all about calming and being present in the breath.
Yeah.
Being present in that conscious, concentrate on your consciousness.
Yeah.
Something like that. If you can't close your eyes, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I feel more relaxed already just from you doing that.
I know.
I think you'd be a great guided meditation guide.
Sure, yeah. You can join my groups on Wednesdays at noon. Every Wednesday I have a group. It's just interesting how that goes. And I see it all the time. And another big thing, if you want to visualization, if you want to have like visualize your highest self. Visualize the things that you want. Maybe if you want to become a better basketball player, imagine like you're just throwing hoops. You're throwing, you're at the free throw line and you're just shooting free throws, and you're just perfect finger roll, swoosh every single time, swoosh. Shoulders go up and all that stuff. That's another way of meditation. Like there's very useful things to do. Visualization. You can also keep your eyes open. For those folks, this is another tip I have for people who say they can't close their eyes and they just start to go into dream state, or maybe they start sleeping. What you can do is you can find yourself with a nice blank wall, or find yourself in a very quiet room where no one's going to disturb you for at least 20 minutes. And then find a spot, either in front of you or more likely right straight ahead of you. So because if you don't want your chin to start tucking down and your eyes to start drooping, because that's going to activate your brain to go to sleep. You want to keep your head up, your chin up, like level, and your eyes level, and find a blank spot and have a loose focus on the wall. And keeping a loose focus on that spot on the wall, and then doing your breathing techniques at the same time also helps. And it stops your mind from going, because when your eyes are closed, there's subconscious parts that will start imagining things.
Exactly.
So eyes open meditation is helpful for those people who can't meditate. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, just to tap into, I know you love the science, Rishi. The science behind this is that we have this thing called the autonomic nervous system, and there's two branches. There's the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight, the thing that makes us get up and go. And then there's the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest system. And meditation is truly parasympathetic stimulation. So down regulating all of the get up and go that is so prominent in daily modern life in the West. So it is truly the antidote to all of the stress that we feel from going all the time. And I think we're getting close to our time for today's episode. Any calls to action for you, Rishi? You did a great job giving people examples of techniques they can use.
Calls to action. I would say just maybe be more conscious of yourself and see what you're doing. Maybe take some moments. Everyone has 10 minutes out of the day, 15 minutes. You probably spend 15 minutes, I don't know, like making a bookmark on your phone for something, You probably watched like 3 cat videos in 15 minutes, on your phone.
Yes.
Take that moment to maybe just sit down and do some breathing techniques. Why not? You can make a change. That in itself will make a change. Remember that lady? We just talked the example of 6 weeks of like 15 to 30 minutes a day, and all of a sudden her brain changed.
And the effects all add up over time. I think that's a perfect call to action. So everybody, if you have a few minutes every day, spend a little time on meditation, it'll increase your quality of life by 10% at least.
At least 10%, maybe 11%.
Maybe 11 or 12 on a good day. If you would like to continue to support us at Conscious Quest, our aim is to continue to give you things that add value to your life. It would help us if you're on Apple Podcasts and would love to leave us a 5-star review. That really helps the algorithm so that we can get the word out there. We also have a little GoFundMe button on our Linktree if you would like to donate to our cause to keep our production going. We appreciate any of that. And thanks for your consideration. I think this is another great installment of our Change Your Mind series, that we are trying to give you some things that will just make your life better. And we want to continue to bring that to you in all the ways we can. Yeah.
Wow, what a great, I might actually go meditate now. I meditated already. So this has inspired me to maybe go sit down and instead of watching TV like I was going to plan to do right now, maybe I'll just go meditate instead.
Go for a second round, huh?
That's right. Very good.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Tune in next time and we'll have another fun topic to keep you conscious.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.